when the night falls, the magical cat band plays tropical cumbia for us.
Welcome to episode 81 of Ivancast podcast. My name is Ivan. I am your host, and I'm super excited about tonight's episode. Today on the show, sound artist and photographer Hiroshi Ebina. Hello, Hiroshi. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. First of all, did I pronounce your name correctly? Did I speak correctly?
Yeah, you did. I mean, just like nobody got my name right, to be honest. But everyone has their own accents, and that's totally fine for me. So, yeah,
that's great. Thank you so much. So I am on the other side of the world. Isn't it amazing?
Much, yeah.
So you're from Japan, right? You're in Japan right now.
Right.
It's Friday noon in Japan, isn't it?
Right. So it's just around 12 o'clock right now. Yeah, it's just Friday noon. It's pretty warm up here. Okay, it's winter down there, I guess.
We actually don't have seasons right here.
I'm
in the middle of the earth. I am in Ecuador,
right.
So we don't really have like we have winter. I'm in the rainforest, so we have a lot of rain for sure.
Course. Yeah.
So here's like crazy. You have really nice sunny days and then rainy days. It's kind of a mixture of both. But I enjoy being here, and it's very, I go to bed every night and wake up every day with, the incredible sounds of all the animals and plants around me, I'm surrounded by nature, I'm kind of deep in the rainforest. So I created here my podcast studio, and then, when I listen to your music and go for a walk or something like that, it's like the perfect match, it's really cool.
Yeah, sounds pretty nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I've been I was actually checking your Instagram today. I like to dive deep into my guests' Instagram and check some videos and read the descriptions and also what people say, and it was interesting because I really, for a person like me who has spent a lot of time on the internet, to find somebody who has created this nice atmosphere, like this community you have where people talk nice things and nice comments, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And you have created that with your music, isn't it?
Yeah, that's something I didn't necessarily intend to do when I was starting with my Instagram. Well, I got my account many years ago, but I started posting the video, like this 1 minute or less video, about, I don't know, like 4 years ago, something like that. Just to make an excuse to create something regularly. Because otherwise, we often have, as an artist, we often have the time that we're not really inspired to do anything or create anything. So I push myself to make something really short every weekend or something like that, to explore something that I haven't done before. And that is a quite good exercise for me. And then Instagram is kind of a means for me to push myself to do that on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And one thing I read a lot from people was like, thank you for sharing this. The world needs like this type of calming music. Is it that what the world needs right now? Or, we are also living crazy, unpredictable times, right? So do you think people are trying to look for this type of music even more than before? Let's say ambient music, let's call it now.
Right. Well, I think so. I hope so. And then I don't really listen to my own music, but I always listen to ambient music. Of course, it's not the only genre of music that I listen to.
Really? You always have? You always have? Or how? When did you start composing this type of music?
Well, probably I've been doing this over the past 10 years or
10
so.
years.
Right, with the different kinds of instrument. And I started with like the regular guitar and then a bunch of pedals and all that kind of stuff first. And I shifted to Ableton and a couple other plugins inside the computer. And when I was living in New York several years ago, I got to see some of my friends using the Eurorack synthesizers, and that kind of encouraged me to switch to the hardware synthesizer and then other acoustic instruments, and that's what I stick to
Nice.
right now.
That's
So
what you do right now,
yeah.
right?
But going back to your first question, yeah, I think the world needs this type of calming music, and that might not be the ambient music, but well, if you look at the YouTube, you see tons of videos on lo-fi hip hop or
Yeah. Yeah.
study with me type of thing. You know, just like a 2 hours long video on just one guy, you know, sitting in front of a computer, and then basically the sound you can hear is just the ambient sound from like
Right. Yeah.
rain
Right.
or
Yeah.
wind or maybe this guy playing the jazz type of thing. So yeah, I think people spend longer time at home past couple of years. So I think, yeah, I think there's a certainly demand for more calming music instead of really uplifting music. But that's my guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. So, um, let's talk a little bit music vocabulary, because I think it's necessary in order so listeners
Right.
can understand what type of instrumentation you play. I don't know if the correct word will be operate, because it's really cool to see your videos, all the things that you do with all the modular synthesizers and machines. I love seeing that, just to see all the cables and
Yeah.
waves and stuff. It's totally my thing. So maybe can you explain us, maybe first of all, what is a modular synthesizer? There is this word also, um, Euro rack, no? Euro rack
Right.
modules, tape machines. As I said before, I read some of your descriptions. You talk a lot about using Morphogene. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this word
Oh, yeah,
correctly.
that's the
The
name of the module.
ER301,
Mhm.
Nagra. So all those things. Can we maybe first of all get into the into the vocabulary?
Yeah. So modular synth is
Uh,
kind of like all-encompassing word to describe the type of synthesizer that comes with different components that you
uh-huh.
can reassemble and
Hmm.
then adjust based on your preferences or your goals.
Hmm.
Many different companies make that kind of stuff. Moog, for example, and it's been around for like, I don't know, half a century or so.
Yeah.
And the Eurorack synthesizer is one of those modular synthesizers. And basically, you see a bunch of different companies making the synthesizer in this format.
Hmm.
So once you get the case for this Eurorack synthesizer, you can put anything in it. Any Eurorack synthesizer that made by all the different kinds of the synth company, because it's made in with the same standard. So that's a big advantage if you want to make something on your own,
Hmm.
something that helps you achieve your sound. It does, yeah, as you pointed out, it does come with a bunch of cables because it basically when you have to connect those modules, you have to use a cable to
Hmm.
pass around the sound and through those oscillators and effects and all that kind of stuff. So that's the modular thing. That's the ULOC thing. And as you
Okay.
mentioned, a couple of modules that I use frequently. Morphogene is one of them,
Hmm.
and it's basically a sampler, granular sampler that basically it records sounds and then grabs a snippet of the sound and then manipulate it to create interesting soundscape. But I pretty much use it as looper, like very simple looper with
Okay.
randomized starting point type of thing. So you can record sound and then kind of creates interesting melody line that you didn't necessarily intend to, and it's kind of beautiful way to discover
Hmm.
the new melody line, the music that I'm trying to create. The EO301 is kind of like it says sound computer as I have it right in front of me right now, and it is in the sound computer. It's kind of like the 4-track Ableton type of thing, because you can throw in a bunch of modules inside this particular module to create your own track, full independent track, and it's very flexible, very powerful. Actually, the guy making is in Japan, and I'm not quite sure
cool.
where he's from, but probably American. I got his name. It's Brian, whom I've never met in person before. But I purchased it when I was living in New York, and I had it shipped from Tokyo.
Oh, right.
So that was an interesting connection
Cool.
to this maker.
Uh-huh.
Other than that, I guess you mentioned Naga.
The Nagra, yeah.
Right.
What's that? What's the Nagra?
Nagra is the tape machine. It's a 1/4-inch tape machine.
Oh, that's a tape machine. All right.
Right. And then one I have probably came out about, I don't know, 60 years ago or something like that. So it's such an old machine, and that I purchased a couple of years ago on eBay. Price is going up quite a bit since then because lots of people started using it.
Yeah.
And I post videos on YouTube and Instagram. That includes me. But yeah, it does make the beautiful sound without. Well, it does create some noise, but it has very high quality, high fidelity sound with very minimal amount of noise. But you can use it creatively, as I do. For example, I make a very long tape loop and then play it on this machine and then add the sound on top of it. So when you bypass the erase head, which is placed right before the recording and then play head, basically you can add the sound on top of the previous recording. It's kind of like a looper, but the beautiful thing about this is that every time it goes around, the previous recordings fades away a little bit. So it's kind of like looper slash delay type of thing. And when you make a long loop, 1 meter, 2 meter, for example, you just can make this really interesting soundscape that you can play on top of it. And then that is an interesting way to, like, it's kind of like Morphgen that I mentioned earlier. It's kind of like you kind of improvise, the synths or the electric piano or guitar or something like that with this machine, and then create something that you didn't necessarily intend to create. So when you start, playing around with a tape loop for a couple of minutes, you notice that you create some sort of melody line coming out, and that is very interesting, I guess, process to discover the music that I'm creating.
So you are not using a computer anymore, right? Everything is all these instruments are analog.
I mean, I still use computer, of course, to record my stuff, and then mixing, and then for that kind of general purposes. But well, you're right. Most of the instruments I use are the hardware synthesizers and a couple of acoustic instruments. Then I'm very strict about that when it comes to the instrument choices. I have a couple of interesting software app on my iPad, but I don't really use it so often.
Okay.
They're a great tool, to be honest.
Cool.
Very, very nicely designed. But but most of the things I use are hardwares.
That's amazing. So I guess we can imagine this, like, because I also saw you, so you play, for example, the glockenspiel, right?
Right.
Or the kalimba, which I love. I love the sound of the kalimba. So the sound of the kalimba goes to one of these synths, right? The Morphogene, probably, right?
Exactly. That's this sampler loop module that I
That's a
mentioned.
sampler, right?
Right.
And then this signal is sent to one of the other racks.
Kind of depends on what I'm trying to achieve each time. Each time make
so I'm trying to think
song or
think about the process of your compositions, right? What we can definitely hear in your latest album.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I usually start from very simple idea, such as what's going to happen if I send this sound to this module and then this module and then and then see what comes out and then
Yeah.
I experiment with it. Um, it depends, but I usually don't have a very concrete idea of what I'm trying to achieve each time I compose. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the module like Morphogen is kind of great too for that kind of process because it
Yeah.
just kind of reshuffle the recording and then create something new out of it.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting process if you have this kind of module.
Yeah, that's it's totally amazing. I mean, it's like a totally different way to perceive music, to conceive music.
Hmm.
What does music mean to you? I mean, I also read that um you are a gagaku performer, right? Which is
Right.
Japanese classical music, right?
Hmm.
So let's talk about your musical journey a little bit. So you were born in Japan. You also lived in New York for a while, and you have
Right.
all this background, and now creating these sounds. Uh, what does music mean to you?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of big question, of course,
Yeah.
but why I say in terms of my, I guess, experience and history related to music, I guess starts from well, I picked up my first guitar when I was about 12 or 13,
Hmm.
and I got my acoustic guitar, very cheap one, and
Okay.
then I think that was the first exposure to any kind of instrument other than something really stupid that you have to learn at the elementary school.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and then um, I started this gagaku, this traditional Japanese music when I was 14 or 15, and I've been doing that since then. And I think that's the only formal, quote unquote, formal education that I received in terms of my musical career. Um,
Hmm.
I think I did take the guitar lesson when I was starting with it. So that was like, yeah, the 13 or 14 years old. Um, I went to the class and then I think I was learning very simple stuff, very basic stuff, like how to play the chords and the strum and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but other than that, I am pretty much self-taught, and then especially since the YouTube came out, I learned I got most of my knowledge from the YouTube, um, uh, especially when it comes to music or how to create music. I take photos, so I learned lots of things from YouTube related to
Hmm.
photos.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and um, other than my Japanese music, well, with my guitar, I was trying to play rock music first, and then soon I shifted to the Irish music. I think that was when I was 15 years old, and there is a small but um, um, very, I guess, lively community of Irish music players in Tokyo.
Hmm.
Um, and then I joined that when I was a high school student, and
Okay.
I've
Cool.
been
Irish. You said
Irish.
Irish music. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So there's a huge, not huge, of course, but there's a community of Irish music fans, players in Tokyo. And I joined that, as I've said, when I was a high school student. And I kept doing that for like, I don't know, like 6 years, 7 years or so. And then of course, I like it. But I thought that I was not necessarily good at playing it. So, uh, but I think I've always been a big fan of ambient music in general.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout I guess, I'm not quite sure when I started listening to ambient music, but at least when I was in the college already, I was already listening to, Brian Eno and Ryuichi Sakamoto, and then
Oh yeah, Brian.
and
You know.
then just those very popular people with music. And I didn't really, at the beginning, I didn't really think of creating something on my own original ambient music. But I think that was when I first listened to Taylor Dupuis' music. He's the owner of the very popular label called 12K, and he often collaborated with Ryuichi Sakamoto. I had a chance to listen to his music, I think, when I was, let's see, maybe 20 or 21 years old. And then I thought it's very interesting because it's very minimum, but the soundscape is so rich. And so I was like, I was, to be honest, surprised to see how much you can achieve with this very selected minimum amount of instrumentations. And that is, I guess, the starting point that his music kind of encouraged me to create something on my own, because I thought that will be something I can make on my own, because it's, in terms of the number of instruments he uses, it's very simple, because just it sounds like he uses the 2 or 3 instruments at any given moment. So I thought of doing the same on my own, and then it turned out to be very difficult to create interesting music with limited amount of instruments. So yeah, and then I think I kept doing that since then, because I'm still learning, of course. It's always learning process whenever I try to create something new. But yeah, I can keep doing it because it's just never ends. It just every time I try something new, it just teaches me something I never noticed before. So yeah, that's why I keep going.
Awesome, cool. And are you? Because I haven't, but I didn't see any of these classical Japanese instruments in your videos. Do you play them regularly?
Yeah, I do actually. I play the wind instrument, and then well, I mean, it had to be, when you want to play this music called gagaku, you have to be multi-instrumentalist, because you have to pick at least one instrument and one string instrument, and there are like 3 different kinds of the percussions, and you have to be able to play them all, and you also have to learn how to dance and how to sing. So you kind of have to master, at least you are encouraged to master all of them, which is kind of a weird thing, because if you think of, I don't know, the opera, for example, in a Western tradition, it's just like one musician have to learn how to play the violin, how to sing and act, and conduct, and all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't really happen in the Western tradition. But that's what we have in Japan. That you have to have an understanding of pretty much everything that's happening in the music.
Wow, amazing. Gagaku, right?
Right.
So
Gaku.
Yeah, so you have to learn all that when you are in school.
Right. Well, I didn't really learn it at school, but yeah, I went to I joined a couple of the Gagaku group in Tokyo, and then one of them has had a teacher coming from the Imperial Household Agency. So my teacher and many others working at this agency serves the imperial family in Japan. They often have like the Shintoistic ceremony, so they have to pray along with it. Whenever they play not just gagaku, but also the Winston instrument. So whenever they have the guests from outside Japan, they have to play the national anthem with, I don't know, violin or piano or something like that. So that's the job. And I was lucky enough to study gagaku from one of them. when I was younger, about 10 years ago or so, I think.
Mm-hmm. So your latest album, It Just is out now.
Yeah, I think it came out about. I'm trying to remember when it came out. I think it was April or something like that.
Yeah. You have put a lot of music already out, right? Checking all your
Well, I
all
don't
your
really
discography.
say it's a lot. I already have a couple of music, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, what was your approach when you composed your latest album?
Yeah. So my latest album, it just is. Um, I think I was. I had this idea of creating an album using acoustic instrument.
Yeah.
Not just now, no electric instruments. So I limit myself to acoustic instruments and manipulate them using morphing, that's the module that I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
or the tape machine, and I create interesting sonic scape. So that was my goal and the starting point.
Cool.
So yeah, then I think I use so many different kinds of processing throughout this album, and then not everything actually sounds like acoustic instrument, but they are indeed coming from the acoustic instrument. It could be acoustic guitar or kalimba or the glockenspiel,
Mm-hmm.
a piano, um, and then I turn them into something that sounds more like synthesizer at the end. And yeah, that was the process. And in terms of the concept, I wrote about that a little bit on the Bandcamp page, but yeah, I tried to detach any meaning or my thought
Mm-hmm.
that often come along with this creating album process.
Yeah.
Because it's just when you're trying to create something, could it be album or could it be the song,
Yeah.
you have something that you want to express. It could be your
Yeah.
thought
Right.
or idea or something you're having trouble with. It depends. But I want to say that it has no meaning behind this
Right.
music.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like this, I guess, of pop art or the minimal art that came out in the 60s to 80s.
Mm-hmm.
There's it's kind of like the artwork itself does not have meaning, but it's all about the relation between this artwork and listener in this case. So the old interpretation is valid, equally valid, and I have nothing to add or collect to each interpretation. So that's kind of like my the basic idea for this album.
The concept of the album. Yeah, that sounds great. It's really, I I think it's an album you have to kind of connect with in order to really enjoy the whole. As you said before, you only use acoustic instruments in it,
Yeah,
um, and that is it's just so amazing. I had an amazing experience when I listened to your album for the first time, and um, yeah, as you said before, the interpretation it's for the listener basically. No,
yeah,
you don't made it
exactly.
from a cathartic perspective, but more for just put it out there for the listener, right?
Yeah, I kind of I kind of disappear behind this sound, and then I not try to show my ego by
Yeah,
making this album or
yeah,
playing this particular music. And then I hope I was successful in terms of that.
great. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about when I thought about your latest album and the concept of the album. Like,
Mm.
I thought about a lot about starting meditating. Do you meditate? Are you
I do, yeah,
you do?
regularly, yeah.
Are you also a religious person?
Well, I don't practice anything myself, but well, if I have to choose one, I think it's fair enough to say I'm a Buddhist because I have the longest history of joining the rituals and all that kind of stuff. And
All right.
if you're in Japan, if you're born in Japan and you have family here, chances are you have opportunities to join some sort of Buddhist or the Shintoist festival or the rituals in your life. But I have, when I was at the college and the graduate program, I was studying religion. So that was my specialty.
Okay.
So I studied so many different kinds of religions, both old and new. And then I also studied art history as a minor. So yeah, that's kind of like my educational background.
I as I mentioned before, I like to dive on my guest Instagram, and one of your photos was really interesting, and I want to quote what you wrote in the description. You said, "I feel bad for today's kids since it's almost like we are actively encourage them to ignore charm in the physical world and force them to stick to computer-generated objects." Um, can we have some context on this picture? Do you remember what picture I'm talking about?
Right. I think that was, I'm not quite sure it was the photo or the video that I posted, but I think I was talking about, Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's a video.
And then, right. And then I'm not quite sure if it has anything to do with my music, but yeah, I was watching. I just happened to see this latest the Thomas the Tank Engine that is available right now. That one that the kids right now watch it, and pretty much everything is CGI if we have seen it.
Yeah.
And then, to be honest, it's kind of creepy to see all that kind of the facial expressions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the
I've been
latest
thinking,
technology. Yeah.
I'm telling you this because I've been thinking a lot about lately about also the role music is playing in the newer generations. Like it's something more like is in the background, music. And I know it's just the zeitgeist of our time, the spirit of our time right now.
Yeah.
Like we are attached to our computers and cell phones, and it seems like we are just uh, it's like we are programmed to just develop into more and more technology. We need the latest things, right? So I was thinking that the role of music in that context, and think about
Yeah.
what is.
I mean, well, as I have said, when it comes to creating music, I try not to use any computer or software of any kinds, and I use my computer just to record the sound. It's kind of like this 8-track, old school 8-track machine that people used to use before the computer came in. And then, yeah, then the things I do with my computer is pretty basic, just multi-track recording and then a couple of effects such as EQ and then compression, all that kind of stuff. Very simple stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. When it comes to this, it doesn't have to be Thomas the Tank Engine, but any kinds of kids show happening right now, I think pretty much everything is done using computer, and I think it's done for a reason, because I think it's more efficient, less time consuming, and then more budget friendly when you make everything using computer graphics. Because if you think about back in the days, people had to make this tiny models for each locomotives
It's
for
crazy,
the
right?
Thomas the Tank Engine, and in those tiny figures and all the rails, and then you have to film them in the studio, and then I'm sure it was very time consuming to do that. But that's something I took for granted, not just me but everyone, took for granted when we were actually watching it like a couple of decades ago. And then when you compare what we had back then and what we have right now, the difference is very striking because you can feel with this previous version of this Thomas the Tank Engine, you can feel the warmth, the tangible feeling of this actual objects moving around on the rails, and this eyes are moving, and then it's very primitive in terms of the technology, but it's more. I don't know. It feels more human to me, and I think that's what we are missing right now because we try to make everything more efficient and then and as easy as possible. But especially since this COVID came in, we've been talking mostly online. People have less chance to. Right now, it's coming back to normal a bit by bit, but over the past 2 years, we had very small chances to see each other, and then basically we minimize our interaction to this online communications. So I think it's this interaction with the physical world is, I guess, something we miss the most. And then I think when it comes to my own life, I think I do appreciate the actual object instead of something that generated by a computer. So yeah, when it comes to my instrument, I love my synthesizer because I have actual knobs and sliders, all that kind of stuff. It has like different colors and shapes, and then I feel it with my fingers, and I can see it, and then I think it does affect the way I create music because this a visual, and then the visual information or the feeling I have on my fingers could be the source of inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. But what do you think is going to be the future of music in terms of, I mean, like, let's say pop music? It's going to be the same as it was 30 years ago, 20 years ago?
I mean, it's getting harder and harder to monetize music because, to be honest, it's very, very difficult to make people on the street to understand that you actually have to pay for music because people get the Spotify and then Apple Music, but the price per song or album on those streaming platform is like close to zero. It's infinitely small. So I guess people, especially younger people, don't really have this basic understanding that there's a people actually making those kind of music, and then you kind of have to pay for it to appreciate the music that you want to listen to. And then I think I'm part of the problem because I do subscribe Apple Music, and it is a great way to listen to and then discover new artists. And then I wish, for students, for example, I think it's a great way to, keep discovering new music because you have to pay the price for the one album per month, and you basically have access to all the music that is out there. And it's indeed good opportunities for small artists like me because you don't really have to have this the big distribution channel to release your music. So there's a potential to reach so many people out there using this latest downloading or streaming platforms. But so I think there's pros and cons when it comes to this latest digital media.
Absolutely, but people can actually buy your albums in cassette form, right?
They do, and then I do
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
People can buy cassettes. That's amazing.
I mean, it's kind of like it's interesting time because 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, it was basically the golden era of this pirate music,
Yeah.
Nipsa and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think people started thinking that the actual like CDs and vinyls will be just gone from the market completely. And yes, indeed, we don't really have like Tower Records or other CD shops anymore on the street. But it kind of came back in the different ways because nowadays people use vinyl
Yeah.
kind of
I know.
cassettes on purpose because it has like a different charm that the um, file digital
That's
files
right.
do not have, and they love the vinyl because it has a tangible. It is a tangible object, and then comes with the different kind of sound that the digital files cannot create. And same can be said for the cassette because it has a cassette sound, and it, of course tangible and it's correctable as a physical object. So I think if I remember correctly, the sales of the vinyl in the US is actually bigger than the sales of CD right now. So, so I think it's an interesting era that the people kind of shift into this hybrid format. I think it's not just about analog and not just about this digital, the computer, but people enjoy both, and then somehow they bring both worlds into the same world. So I think they kind of coexist right now. Yeah.
So, and how do you, are you making music all the time? Do you also make money as a sound artist, as a sound designer? Because I saw you
Yeah. I mean,
also make some music for commercials and stuff like that. No?
right. I do, but that's been
Mm-hmm.
my side job. I have my day job, and then
Mm-hmm.
I've been making music when I have the free time. But yeah, luckily I have some good labels out there that
Mm-hmm.
have interest
Right.
in my music, and I also have chances to do some sort of commercial works
Mm-hmm.
in the past few years, and I do appreciate that kind of opportunities
Some
because
ads.
I started doing it just for fun, and right now,
Yeah.
yeah, it came to the point where I can call this as my side job. So yeah, I
Cool.
don't take it for granted.
Cool. But you have a main job, so
Yeah, that's
right.
take care the job that takes care of my finances, and I put the food on the table. But with that,
Yeah.
I can focus on my music
Mm-hmm.
without really worrying about the financial side of my life. So
Yeah.
I think that is very very essential to create music actually because yeah, if it is indeed my job, I guess the creating music is not going to be fun anymore because I have to worry about my paychecks.
Yeah.
So yeah, having this the stable financial sources kind of gives me the peace of mind and the motivation to create music.
A
In my
chance
case, yeah,
to explore all those sounds. And you are also into photography too, right?
yeah.
Cool. Also taking photos with phones.
I think I started taking photos with my iPhone
Yeah.
when I was the graduate students, and
Yeah.
then I started having fun with those different kinds of filters, and then I thought I should get the actual camera, and then I've been using my digital camera since then. But I think that was like 4 years ago, something like that. I switched to the film camera, and right now it's kind of like a film camera renaissance that is happening in many parts of the world.
Nice.
And you see like tons of YouTube channels focusing on the film camera and how to use film camera, all that kind of stuff. So I was definitely influenced by that, and I grabbed my first film camera, got the second one and third one, and I think this is another interesting example of this digital analog hybrid format, because I take photo using my film camera, but I scan the film, the negative, using my scanner, and then process it using my Lightroom and then Photoshop. So it's kind of interesting marriage between this analog format and the digital tools. And then I enjoy the whole process. And I definitely get inspired to take more photos when I grab my the film camera. And that is something that I don't really find when I grab my digital camera.
Hiroshi, listen, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for your time, sharing all your experiences and the way you make music.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That was really cool. I would love to end the show by reading one other of your descriptions that I saw in one of your photos that also caught my attention. You said, my conviction is that time is ultimately our illusion. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so there's no way that I can pretend that I'm a quantum physicist or anything, but I do enjoy reading or hearing.
Yeah, me neither, but I also enjoy thinking and talking about it.
I do enjoy reading and listening to all those stories related to the quantum physics and then how universe is created. So yeah, the time is illusion because there's no consistent time that flows in the same speed throughout the universe, because the time is slower on this planet Earth, and then it goes slightly faster up there in outer space. So in fact, if you spend, say, a whole year in this space station, you basically travel into the future by 0.01 second or something like that. You just can calculate it based on this gravity, the strength of gravity or the lack of it. So it's a very interesting concept to notice that the time is always moving forward, but it's not as universal as it seems. And then basically, there's no way to measure time because we sort of recognize time based on, say, how flower grows or the kids getting bigger or how we age or the sun comes up and go down. That's how we process time, but that's we're just processing. We're just observing those process of things changing, and but there's no time. There's no ways for us to experience this movement of time itself. We just observe those changes and pass them together inside our brain and recognize it as time.
Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts and ideas, Hiroshi, tonight on the podcast. Everybody go and check out Hiroshi's music people can actually buy your music on Bandcamp.
Yes, they can, yeah.
Yeah, or stream to your music, I guess, on all music platforms, right? Quiet, intimate sounds from Japan. Thanks so much, Hiroshi.
Thanks for having me again.
Okay. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.